This week in the 1900 house, the Bowler children make their own entertainment.
It's great!
But Catherine is not amused.
Boring stories. There's no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing.
Joyce enjoys being a lady of leisure, but finds it hard to be mistress of the house. Her relationship with Elizabeth deteriorates.
I'll bet you any money now, before they move out, that house will look like a tip.
And there's a family portrait, a trip to the dentist, and a music hall performance.
Become Prime Minister!
That's a Kent for you, my son.
Then the family gets ready for their trip back to the future.
No, turn them the other way, so they're facing outwards. Yeah. Like that, and it's very easy.
Can I have Daddy's lip?
It's a whole lot cleaner.
In 1900, this suburban home was a refuge. Outside, the city streets were rife with poverty and danger. The new middle class retreated into their respectable homes, where an evening's entertainment consisted of needlework, music, card games, reading, and perhaps a glass of beer. For 2 months, the Bowler family has been holed up every evening. Their only amusements are those they've made themselves.
Cheers.
Cheers.
With 4 weeks left in the 1900 house, the routine is starting to get to all of them.
Finished, Joe.
It's not finished. We're not.
I know exactly how it feels to be stuck in a Victorian, boring, mind-numbingly boring existence. And now I know why. When Victorians did things, they threw themselves into it. They threw themselves into good works. Why they could find their hobbies so absorbing. They were craving some mental stimulation. They were looking for something that would lift them out of the ordinary.
The Bowlers are desperate to find new ways to entertain themselves. Starting with a new nightly ritual. They've saved enough from their budget to afford a newspaper.
Newspaper here.
What is it?
It's Saturday, April 14th, year 1900.
As well as the news from the Empire, the paper contains advertisements for a whole range of new and exciting products, including some all the way from America.
Kodak photography. May be mastered by anyone in a few minutes. No darkroom required for changing of films. A marvel of compactness, simplicity, and efficiency. Can be had on the Times Encyclopedia Britannica system of payment by monthly instalments.
Mail order arrived in 1872, the same year Montgomery Ward began sending catalogs in the U.S. In 1900, purchase on credit payable by door-to-door collection brought home shopping to the masses.
Hello? Delivery?
What is it? What is it? It's the very latest technology. Right.
The first delivery, as advertised in the newspaper, a must for any girl aiming for the bright new world of secretarial work.
Do you find it a tantalising object? Because it says many young persons are now earning their own living in the offices of Empire through its services.
It's not exactly a laptop, is it? No laptop would be
Oh, it's got a lovely sound. This is my new typewriter. You have to give it a good thump. It's not like a computer where you just touch it. Do it again. Just wind it up a bit.
The QWERTY keyboard still used today on computers is awkward for the typist to learn, but was designed to slow the fingers down and stop the keys from jamming.
Give it some oomph. One at a time.
Delivery number 2, the world's first widely affordable camera, a Kodak Box Brownie. Its price tag, $1.
What's it actually made of, the camera? Cardboard. Cardboard.
This little button here, if you can undo that.
Yeah.
Winding thing. The film goes in there.
Yeah.
It's a roll film. Hole.
The simplicity of its easy-to-load cartridge film made it ideal for children.
Yeah.
Ooh, can I have a look through and see if I can see you?
Yeah, you have to make sure I'm in the light range, like down here.
It's amazing. That tiny little thing, you can see all that detail.
Photographs were just finding their way into newspapers and magazines. Catherine is browsing through a copy of the Girl's Own paper from 1900.
This is the picture pull-out of the contributors to the Girl's Own paper. Look at them. The Girl's Annual has got absolutely nothing in it, nothing of interest whatsoever. It's absolutely rubbish. Tells you pointless stories. And here we have the Princess of Wales at a dairy. Phew. The excitement in their life, eh? Boring stories. There's no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing.
The twins, however, are inspired and decide to go into production with their own edition of the Girl's Own paper.
Nick the idea from here that we could have two girls at the top, but have us up there.
Me and Ruth are making a magazine, and it's going to have little adverts in. It's going to have just loads of articles in.
I'm taking lots of photographs.
We've got Mum's been in agony aunt,
And at the top we've got 1900 journal and a picture of me and Hillary.
and it's going to be really good. I really enjoy making it. It's just something to do, something to pass the time.
Costume!
The first feature, fashion. 1900 supermodel, Catherine.
Oh, I can do faces, I can do extra faces, I can do listening. And I can do watching.
1, 2, 3.
Let's go. I don't remember slippers.
Time to try for an action shot. Not easy with a film speed of around 10 ASA, 20 times slower than film today.
Make them your friend.
But it's going to take more than a modelling stunt to cheer Catherine up.
I wanted to come and do the Victorian project. I thought it'd be an adventure, you know, stepping back in time, seeing what my ancestors would have lived like. But, and there's a big but, the fact is that I've experienced it and now I'm sick of it. If I don't go out at least once a week, even if it's just a video and pizza evening with loads of chocolate ice cream around at my friend's house, or going clubbing, you know, either one of those things will make me happy.
There were no nights out clubbing in 1900. Even in less restricted America, a teenager's wildest evening out would be a church supper or an educational lecture.
Come in. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you knock. That's right. Catherine. Catherine!
In an attempt to alleviate Catherine's boredom, an appointment has been arranged. Joyce is hoping to interest Catherine in a pastime popular in 1900.
So, do you recognise yourself here? Well, you're really learning to play the piano for two reasons. First of all, you want to amuse yourself. Secondly, you want to amuse other people. Okay? So, what we need to do is to learn to read music. But
Mastering a musical instrument was an important skill for a Victorian girl, a passport to entertaining at musical evenings, a rare opportunity to meet a suitor.
Third finger on a C.
To be honest with you, I don't particularly want to know what a Victorian girl of my age will want to do. You know, there's just nothing that interests me.
That's it.
I'm sorry if I'm being rude and obnoxious, but that's just the way I am, and you're getting me, Catherine Bowler, angry. You're not getting some poncy girl who, in a Victorian dress saying, oh, I do like my 1999 life, but being a Victorian, it's a really good contrast, and I've learnt to play the piano, and I've also learnt to do some embroidery. You know, that's not me.
Young women like Catherine would have lived at home until they married. As for dating, Joyce has discovered from a Victorian advice book that even thinking about a man was taboo.
The reading of sensational love stories is most detrimental. The descriptions of passionate love scenes arouse in the reader a thrill through her own sexual organism that tends to increase its activity and derange its normal state, and goes on to tell you, you know, how awful it is for girls to think about young men or even to look at young men, you know, because it's going to introduce terrible, not just mental things like, you know, impure thoughts, but also may damage their internal organs. I just can't imagine what good they thought this book was actually going to do anybody.
The piano lessons don't lift her spirits. She calls it quits. Elizabeth, the bowler's maid of all work, is also causing problems.
Assertiveness comes in many shapes and forms, and I'm afraid I don't think I've got it when it comes to reprimanding employees. I'm very new to this game, and I haven't had a maid of all work for very long. She's actually half an hour late, and I was just thinking about what do you say to somebody who's persistently half an hour late?
Working as the bowler's servant has given Elizabeth an appetite. She wants to know more about the working conditions of maids in Victorian England.
Hello. Do you have any social history books about history of women?
Gone 10 o'clock now. What do I say when she turns up? I just say, hello. Hello, bad traffic. Lovely to see you. And then she goes off and does the cleaning.
I got this book which was about Victorian working women, and it actually had in it the diaries of this Victorian gentleman who was called Arthur Munby. He actually had a fascination of finding out what sort of work women did in the Victorian times, and especially hard manual work. Arthur Munby actually married Hannah, who was a maid of all work in a Victorian house, and it was her diary that he encouraged her to write.
The diary that Hannah Munby wrote with the encouragement of her husband records in accurate detail how hard life was for most turn-of-the-century servants. And with no social security, they were at the beck and call of their mistresses.
I suppose she could be ill, but she's been late every day. She did get lost a couple of times. You can't keep getting lost though, can you? I don't know.
Hello.
Hi.
Wash day. Oh my God. Put it down. Lots of whites, really.
Okay then,
All right.
I'll take that off your end. Thank you.
Millions of working-class women were paid extremely low wages and worked in appalling conditions. In America, many of the servants were immigrants, and they left for other jobs as soon as they could, preferring factory work to domestic service.
At school, I was never taught anything about women's history. Most of the things you're taught about is what men have done in society and things like that. And I was like really astounded at the work that they had to do.
Hannah Munby's diary has surprised Elizabeth.
She was quite proud of the fact that she had hard hands, and she was quite proud of the fact that she had really big biceps, because there was actually a picture of her showing her, pulling her sleeve up and showing her biceps, and they are huge, you know, which doesn't surprise me because of the work that they had to do. She writes about having time off. For instance, in like a 12-month period, she would be lucky if she got one night off. And for that one night, she'd have to make sure that the women in the house didn't need her to go out with them, because she was a chaperone as well. And she'd also have to make sure that she'd done the dinner and the tea before she left. So it wasn't like as if they were saying, yeah, take the day off, you don't have to do any work. She actually had to do all the work before she had the time off.
In 1900, many newly aspiring middle-class families were employing domestic help for the first time. This often led to awkward relations between housewife and maid, and Joyce has never had a cleaner before.
It's a bit odd having somebody in your house who isn't a member of your family but gets to look at all your dirty stuff and, you know, wash up. I just feel it's just a bit strange, really. It doesn't feel like your own home. I feel quite uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable because of her, because she's actually very nice and easy to get on with, but it's quite an uncomfortable feeling to have somebody in your home that isn't a member of your family. It doesn't really come naturally to me, that you know, for somebody else to be doing my cleaning. I don't think I've been very
specific. I don't know whether I've been very helpful to her, really. I don't want to work her fingers to the bone, but from a purely selfish point of view, I don't want to do the cleaning. I want to be freed up to do other things, while my poor little skivvy is at home. Oh, God, that's awful, isn't it?
I think Mrs. Bowler has been used to having work which is more of an intellectual side, so she's used to having more stimulation with her mind and using her mind and things like that.
Having a maid gave some middle-class women time to campaign for women's rights.
One of my main pastimes since I've been here is reading, and I'm going through the local library like a dose of salts. And I have a book which refers in the back of it to a lady called Millicent Fawcett, who I have discovered founded a society which was actively campaigning for the votes for women from about the 1860s, and I'm very interested in finding out more about her.
In 1900, in both Britain and America, women could not vote, although the campaign for voting rights was gaining strength. The term suffragette, originally coined as an insult by the London Daily Mail, was quickly adopted by female suffragists on both sides of the Atlantic. Joyce has arranged to meet Diana Dorley, the granddaughter of a suffragette, to find out more.
The suffragettes, you see, had their own magazine and things, which they sold. They weren't allowed to stand on the street to sell it. They had to stand in the gutter. Otherwise, it was counted as obstruction.
And all these women get together, and yet still they're ignored. It's not the lone voice. It's not as if it's some eccentric few.
They were conventional people who believed that women had rights.
As the Votes for Women campaign intensified, women tried civil disobedience to force the government to give them the vote.
That's a belt that they put round their waist and chained themselves to railings. You see, I think the chain would have been attached there. And then they chained themselves to the railings so that they couldn't be got off. And they then would get arrested and put in prison. And they were brutal to them when they put them in the Black Mariahs and things.
It's not just getting the vote, is it? It's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing
for women.
That's right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic for me to be holding this, and somebody wore this. And
they refused to eat. And then they were force-fed.
Force-fed, weren't they?
And that picture is not an over-dramatisation.
It's brutal, isn't it?
It is, yes, it really was. And this was to middle-class women. Because on the whole, it was the middle-class women who did these things, because there were working-class women, but they couldn't afford to lose their jobs.
Exactly, and they didn't have the freedom to do this, really,
that's right.
did they?
Yes.
The more Joyce learns about the campaign for women's rights, the more unhappy she feels about employing a servant.
I just floated about for a bit, and then I started to swim. I suppose I was thinking about, the freedom, and it was lovely to have the freedom and the time to be able to come swimming. And then I was thinking, well, it would only have been certain people, possibly, that would have gone swimming. And my maid of all work, that poor little thing wouldn't have been able to go. And I felt a real hypocrite. Basically, I think if I was listening to myself going on and on about women's rights and about this, that and the other, and liberation and stuff like that, and then I end up with a maid, it's like, I beg your pardon? What the hell are you going on about?
Joyce is uncomfortable having a maid. This puts more strain on her relationship with Elizabeth. Joyce makes a difficult decision.
What I want to say is, I'm liberating Elizabeth. I'm setting her off free into the world to find her way and do her own thing. I just can't have someone else coming in and cleaning up my house.
Joyce can't bring herself to fire Elizabeth face to face, so she sends her a letter.
That's unbelievable, that is. I wasn't expecting that at all. I'd like to see what the house looks like in another couple of weeks when I'm not there. You know, before they move out, I'll bet you any money now, before they move out, that house will look like a tip, like it was when I first started, you know. So I don't know what they're going to do. If they're going to clean it themselves, good luck to them.
Without Elizabeth, Joyce will once again have to do all the cleaning herself. There's a little more than 2 weeks left in the 1900 house, and the routine is getting her down.
Just been in the garden. I was sitting in the chair in the kitchen. I've been reading a bit, and after lunch had a cup of tea and dropped off to sleep. And I was woken by the most fantastic sound. And I walked right up to the fence and was listening. And it was just... I've forgotten how much I miss music.
To satisfy Joyce's craving for music and Catherine's longing for excitement, the Bowlers are having their first evening out of the home. A trip to the Players' Old-Time Music Hall, one of the last surviving music halls in Britain.
Seeing the people on stage at the Players made me think about their lifestyles and how appealing, how attractive it must have seemed to be in theatre as compared to ordinary life, which was extremely ordinary, I think, for most people. It is glamorous, and it must have seemed even more so in 1900, I think, to be able to, you know, just for 5 minutes get up on stage and be like a queen or something, you know, and everybody clapping, and that must have been the thing that kept them alive, really, because it would just keep that little spark of you going.
We haven't had any good nights out, really, and it was just so fantastic and so eventful and so exciting that I really enjoyed myself, and it's a bit like the circus, really. We didn't feel out of place.
Everyone has enjoyed the evening, especially Catherine, who in her modern life is studying performing arts.
The theatre is so fantastic and so alive, and you'd be able to do whatever you wanted. The fantastic freedom of it all. All the different sorts of women that were actually opposed, they were all so done up in lovely stage makeup. Their hair was gorgeous, wearing sort of quite revealing clothing. What went through my mind was, I want to be like that, you know. If I was in 1900, I would want to be like that. That would be my aim.
Okay, so what's the first thing you do?
As a 1900 teenager, I really think that, you know, the boredom in this house, I would have thought a little bit older, and I would have been straight on the stage.
Has to be remembered that I can't sing.
No, that's right.
So that's good.
Inspired by her visit to the music hall, Catherine is taking a bold step and has persuaded Joyce to join her. They're going to try out at the New Faces audition at the Players Theatre and are writing a routine. They summon Catherine's ex-piano teacher, Matthew, to help them.
You know what I mean? Big. Okay. Sell it.
The biggest problem is getting me on the stage. I think if somebody's got a big stick and they can just get me out there, I think I'll be all right.
A seedy world lay beyond the middle-class home, and in 1900, the stage was considered to be a den of vice. In America, a conscious effort was made to clean up the theatre, and the result was vaudeville. It was the family show of the 1900s, designed to appeal to the middle class. But in Britain, the music hall had an unsavory reputation and was not a place for decent families. With Catherine and Joyce intent on performing, Paul has returned to talk to Dominic LaFoe, chairman of the Players Theatre, to find out how this would have been received.
No respectable, in inverted commas, Victorian father would have permitted his daughter to go on the stage willingly. There must have been rebels, of course, but in general, it would have been social death. Actresses were considered almost akin to prostitutes, which was hugely unfair. But nonetheless, that was the situation. musicals were not respectable. They were full of drunken people. They were full of people without any inhibitions for whatever reason. I mean, even drugs were readily available, of course, in chemists in those days. The only women who went to the audience were prostitutes, and the men about town were there, and together they made a very happy evening.
I don't know, as a sort of loving mamma in 1900, whether I would have approved of Catherine going on the stage. I think I probably would. Dear. And risked it.
Unconcerned about their reputations, it's full steam ahead with rehearsals. Catherine's written a song and Joyce has adapted her party piece, which lampoons the social rules that made life so dull for the women in 1900.
She will ride the derby, play football, win the cricket, get the vote, get into Parliament, become Prime Minister.
The girls' own paper is coming along nicely. Just as they would have in 1900, the fashion photos arrived back from the chemist.
This is great. Wow, that is so really good.
Although pictures of young women in underwear would have been considered pornography. For a feature in the magazine, the girls visit one of London's more cultured attractions in 1900, the Victorian and Albert Museum.
And then this is the page that we've saved for your interview. So we're going to put that in the diary as well.
And you're going to
They've arranged to interview the head of research, Clive Wainwright, and are shown rare surviving moving pictures of Queen Victoria.
When does this date from?
1899.
And is this something people would have had in their homes?
No. No. They were very expensive. Oh, right. And the important thing about it is that it records Queen Victoria coming to the museum just 100 years ago, 17th of May, 1899.
Oh, we just missed her.
Yeah, just missed her. And it was almost the last public act. She died a couple of years later.
The images for the mutoscope were shot with an early film camera. Each frame was pasted individually on a card.
Which, if you turn them at just the right speed, it looks like
oh, it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Somebody's got a bunch of flowers.
Yeah. And there she is.
Oh, yes.
While the twins are busy with their interview, Joyce finds an exhibition of photographs taken by a Victorian aristocrat, Lady Howarden.
She's trying to escape. Let me out. Trapped in a corset. Oh, it's quite eerie. I think it looks like us. It looks like us at home. Definitely. Oh, this looks like Catherine sat in her window. Here we have trousers, and we have ladies' legs. Ladies' legs. I want a dressing up box. I think that's what we could have done with.
For their audition, Joyce and Catherine will need new outfits, which they're renting from a theatrical costume house.
Suffragette colours. Well, sort of. Purple, green and white. That's right. Gorgeous.
There's this one, but the dress is in the window, so I don't know if you want to have a look at it.
Oh, yes, please.
That's a hat.
Joyce ignores the 1900 etiquette that no lady should ever be dressed in such a way that she attracts public attention.
Lace, tassels, pizzazz. I'll try that one on. Off we go, quick before anyone sees me.
But before going on stage, Joyce has one more hurdle to clear.
I have a problem. I have lost a filling, therefore I need to go to the dentist. I mean, I think I've got an image in my mind of somebody who's just... I don't know, a Victorian dentist, somebody who pulls your teeth out, really. I just hope he hasn't got lots of nasty instruments and scary apparatus.
In 1900 America, dentistry was a regulated profession, but in Britain, anyone could call themselves a dentist.
100 years ago, you'd have had your teeth extracted and you'd have been gummy. Now, they could make you a denture, but you would have to have been very wealthy to have a denture.
Oh.
The other thing that was tried was tooth transplantation. So they take somebody fairly young with reasonably good teeth, bring them in, take out those good, healthy teeth, and put them into the area where you'd extracted a tooth from a wealthy person. So they got new teeth, as it were.
So rich people bought other people's teeth?
Poor people's teeth.
Poor people's teeth.
Dental transplants were rarely successful. Fillings were possible, but painful. Hot molten metal was poured into the cavity and left to set. But much of the equipment is surprisingly similar.
This tray here is 100 years old. What we need is an appliance to get a tooth out. This was designed. It still works really well, so why change it? I mean, even the drills.
It's foot operated.
It is, yeah. It's like a sewing machine. So you can see.
Although Victorian drills could cut through a tooth, they revolved 1,000 times slower than drills today.
Now, obviously, I've never worked on a patient with one of these before, but you can see
I'm not going to let you work on me.
You can see where the origins came from. It's not a million miles away. Okay, it's a similar idea.
Yeah,
you know, if we had it hanging there, we'll just apply it onto the tooth here.
Joyce decides not to have her teeth done the Victorian way and opts for modern treatment.
And so just isolate the tooth.
Today I'm going to wear stage makeup, stand on a stage, albeit a small one. And today I don't feel very well. I'm a little bit scared.
I give you Miss 2000. Da-da, and applause. Bang, bang, bang. This is my manifesto.
I think I'm scared for Mum as well, because the fact that she's never been on a stage before, it sort of makes it even more sort of tense.
I don't know, this. You're looking at this bloody dress, it's making me feel sick. This is going to be awful, I know it. I'm going to be shockingly bad. No, but come on.
At the Players, Dominique Lafoe is waiting.
Next, please.
Do you want this?
Yeah, in a minute.
Joyce and Catherine have only minutes to get made up, something they haven't done for nearly 3 months, because if you wore makeup in the suburbs, you were considered promiscuous.
Oh, I look lovely.
Until the late 19th century, actors used white lead and rice powder, guaranteed to rot the skin. But Ludwig Leichner's development of dermatologically tested stage makeup opened the way for the 20th century boom in cosmetics.
Still in the dressing room. Ladies and gentlemen, here I stand before you, a woman of the year to... Oh, God, I'm not a woman of the year to...
Ladies and gentlemen, here I stand before you, a woman of the year 1900, womanhood personified. Everything a lady of our age could wish to be. Honest, virtuous, pure in thought, home-loving, standing as the backbone to the empire.
Standing on stage at the Players Theatre was something I never dreamt I would do in 100 years. I was probably one of those terrible people that would have to be dragged off because, like your auntie at a party that has a sherry and, you know, yeah, I think I'm turning into one of those. It was lovely. I really enjoyed it.
100 years into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the woman of the future as she stands on the threshold of the next millennium. I give to you Miss 2000! Hooray!
I think I worked very hard to create an identity for myself as a 1900 woman. It wasn't just a turning from one century into another. It was a turning point for women. So there were lots of things that women could really get their teeth into.
Hooray!
They could suddenly become important. They could become national figures. They could become people in their own right. They could stand up. They didn't have to be, for instance, Mrs. Paul Bowler. I could be Joyce Bowler.
She will ride the derby, play
football, win the cricket, get the vote, get into Parliament and become Prime Minister. Yes. What do you say, sir? Speak up. Hear, hear. Are you a man or a mouse? He's not a tall man, and he's not a short man, but he's just the man for me. Not in the army, not in the navy, but the Royal Marines Artillery.
Joyce and Catherine's show was considered a little too modern for the Players Theatre.
It's been a real privilege to do this because I've not only discovered lots about the period, about history, but about myself as well. And so I don't think it's the real me, but a side of me that I've sat on perhaps before or only allowed out now and again. I've been allowed to indulge that. So for me... Oh, I'm nearly crying. So for me, especially at the end of this, nothing will ever be the same again. And I'm going to let real Joyce out and I'm just going to be me.
The Bowler family's Victorian odyssey is coming to an end. With just 2 days to go, they're eager to reflect on the experience with the help of historian and creator of the 1900 house, Daru Rook.
It's now 3 months since the family moved into 1900 house to start their first days of the experiment which we created. See what would happen if you put a modern family in a house of yesterday. Now I'm back to find out what experiences they've had. Morning, I'm collecting on behalf of the widows and orphans.
Oh, do come in, do come in. And we have lots of widows and orphans in here.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Daru wants to know what they found hard to live without.
I've missed modern detergents, pathetic, shampoo, washing up liquid, and I've missed my weekend newspapers.
Using their telephone, contacting people, putting on comfortable clothes.
You know, bottles of shampoo and conditioner and all these different things you can put all over your body and your hair and your face.
Sweeties.
Shut up. When I get back to the 20th century, the first thing I'm going to do is to listen to some music because I've really missed music here. And yeah, because it's been so quiet.
Oh no, we can't. Chris is in there.
Before the Bowlers leave, they're throwing a Victorian summer party for their new friends and neighbours.
Into one of these.
Daru has brought a 19th century punch recipe.
Sticking outy bits off them. The recipe is incredibly complicated in that we've got to hull and wash all of those, and then we've got to rub them through the sieve into the punch bowl, and then we've got to add sugar, lemon, and 1 or 2 other liquids. It's really strawberry puree with a bit of water added.
No, you're not doing this without an apron on. Strawberry stains. Okay. I want you to look really nice this afternoon, not a big pink mess. I'd like to be able to say that living in 1900 will change the way we live in 1999. I would hope that we would take more time over things, which is something that you have to do here. I think that's why it was so difficult at the beginning, because it was a real slowing down process for all of us. Much more deliberate about things, lots more thought, lots more time for each other. This is such an enormous thing that's touched our lives that I think it will change us. Take your medicine.
Make me like a man.
Just like squash strawberries.
Is it? Well, isn't that incredible?
What were we expecting?
I think we'll have Dad here.
To commemorate their stay, the Bowlers have hired a professional photographer to take their portrait, using a turn-of-the-century camera. 100 years ago, even something as simple as taking an indoor photograph was difficult. To create a flash, he has to use highly explosive magnesium.
It's not something I've done before. I think Paul might know more about armaments than I do.
Yeah, I'll fancy have a go as well then. It's dangerous. I'll do it outside the garden or something.
Many 19th century photographers lost their sight or a limb using this method.
And caps off, firing. Well done.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well done, everybody.
Oh, thank goodness, the sandwiches at last. Do you want to come through to the dining room?
From their household budget, the Bowlers have managed to save enough money to have their party catered. Like 1900 families, they've hired local merchants to provide simple food. Victorians preferred to entertain a large number of people at small cost, rather than a few extravagantly.
Coming through with ice, please. Can you move out of the way?
In turn-of-the-century London, ice was delivered in large blocks. It had come a long way. In 1900, 500,000 tons of ice were imported to Britain from the frozen wastes of Norway and North America. Although the technology existed to keep it frozen, ice could not be made in Britain until the 1920s.
One of the things I've really learned about the families living in 1900 House is what hard work it was in the past. We read the books and magazines of the time, but actually seeing them doing everyday things like making a cup of tea, well, you realise what an absolute slog it must have been. It doesn't do to get too romantic about it.
It's just so much hard work.
Yes.
Everything is so much hard work. Physical hard work.
I mean, you're probably dying to get back to your own place, but
it's all too much, isn't it, really? It's all happening.
You're probably thinking it's gone ever so quickly, and but last time I spoke to you, you were absolutely desperate.
No.
You were counting the days, actually, weren't you, to get home.
This was the charter of the land, and guardian angels sang the strain. Roll, Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves.
Catherine has been counting the days to freedom and is celebrating with more than her fair share of pins.
I know what it tastes like, neat, but you should have some lemonade in it. I mean, my fondant fancy and I need pins. Well, there you go, there's Victorian for you.
That's Fortnum, Patricia and Charlie.
Patricia and Charlie.
Yeah.
You all remember that?
Yeah.
The party's over, and it's time to start saying goodbyes. Poultry historian Fred Hams has come to take away the chickens.
Back to Kent for you, my son.
Joyce and I said we're very sad to leave this house. We've created our little world here, be it good or be it bad. And people said, would you continue? And there are some times when I've said, no, there's no way I can sort of stay, but today I could stay forever.
I'm really going to miss it here. It was something that was just amazing to do. It was so brilliant, and it's just one of those things that you just want to keep forever.
Can you hear? The heavens have opened. Most spectacular thunderstorm, thunder and lightning. Extremely fitting. It's been waiting to come all day, really. I don't want to go home.
Very hot.
I know it's very hot. Can we go open the window? Yeah, come on.
Just when I start to get it right, just when I start to know what I'm doing here, I have to go home.
Morning, sweetheart. You all right?
No.
Bit tired? Yeah, I thought you were. You good to sleep?
I've just been sick in the toilet, so...
Have you cleaned it up?
I've flushed.
It's the bowlers' last morning at 50 Elliscombe Road. Yesterday's party has taken its toll.
How many tins of this have we had since we left? This experience has taught me loads about life in 1900. I think I just did accept that stereotype, that caricature of a person that wore certain clothes, ate certain food, did certain things. Yes, I'm sure there were people like that, but it's made me realise that everybody living in this street, in houses, they were all as different as we are today. And it's made me want to dig deeper to know what it was really like then, and not just to accept what's between the pages of a history book. Where should we go next time?
Well, we couldn't climb Everest as a family.
Yeah, no.
First family on Everest.
In Victorian costume.
You're joking, no? Yeah, it's going to be shorts, t-shirt and suntan, that's what it's going to be.
From tonight, it'll be back to toothpaste.
I hate these toothbrushes.
Double dose today. Horrible.
I'll keep it ready one.
Now it's bicarbonate of soda for the last time.
Oh, these are bent. These are
No, so, no, turn the other way, so they're facing outwards.
Yeah.
Like
The
that.
time has come for the family to shed their 1900 personas, starting with Paul's moustache.
I don't really know.
I don't want to.
Joe will do it, won't you, Joe?
Go on,
No. Don't cut Daddy's face.
Careful.
Careful of Daddy's lips, Joe. That bit.
Actually, it doesn't look too bad, does it? It's no, it's trimmed it up.
A bit neater.
Yeah.
There's one little thing I would like to take with me is my razor. It's been with me right from the beginning, from day one. Right at the beginning, it cut me to pieces, but I've mastered it, and we've got through it together. So it's a significant thing to me, for me to take away, and perhaps put in my bottom drawer for a memory.
Have you looked at yourself?
Yes. Are you ready?
Bad.
I am the dad.
No squealing.
Oh, you cut yourself.
You look a whole lot cleaner.
Who are you?
Just do a normal face. No, I don't think you looked like that before.
That's not you.
You look like a squirrel.
Oh, that's better.
That's better, that's better.
My first kiss in 2 months.
If Mum and Dad said to me, you know, would you like to do this, come back and do this in 2 years' time, I'd definitely say no. I'm sorry. I've done it. I've been there, bought the t-shirt, and I don't want to do it again. I think it'd be nice to see somebody else do it, though. You know, watching somebody else suffer.
But now for Catherine, the suffering has come to an end. The family's modern clothes are returned.
My fleece, my socks, my pink pants. Take off these horrible long socks. The most difficult aspects of 1900 life was sharing a room with my 2 younger sisters, which I didn't enjoy. And I thought it might be a nice time to get to know my little sisters much better, but I didn't.
Can't believe how small my underwear is. Look.
Well, I think
Oh, God. They're nice. Don't invest you.
It's a comparison, Mr. Bowler. And here we are, look, that's what I've been wearing for the last 3 months, and now they expect me to wear these. There you go.
It doesn't look like enough clothes.
I know, it's like...
I'm going to be cold.
So where's the rest of it then?
The girls are now wearing clothes that weigh a third of their 1900 outfits, and Catherine has taken off her hated corset for the last time.
No, again. It's moulded to my body as well. Yeah. Taking it with you? You're in debt, haven't you? Yeah, it's really dirty.
Here we go. I'm free.
That's Umami.
Remember me?
God.
I was still here all along, look.
You go wherever you want to go.
Joyce and Paul take one last look around 50 Elliscombe Road.
See, it all felt real. No, it doesn't seem real anymore, does it? I feel like a visitor. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like I'm making it up or I'm being silly, but I honestly feel like I will leave part of myself here.
No, it'll be
I
somebody
think
else's.
it's definitely the clothes, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like a completely different person.
You're not taking this? It has been your incarceration, hasn't it, for 3 months?
Leave it here.
Okay.
Bye-bye, 50 Elliscombe Road.
Go, my good man.
Having arrived by horse and cart, the bowlers now leave in a more high-tech conveyance.
Hey, what's this, everybody? What's ready?
It's light.
Oh, I think I'm going to be sick.
You know what, Mum, every time...
I know, it's like...
Car sick.
I know it... Oh, God, I feel a bit strong.
I do, yeah, I do too.
Are you sure it's safe to travel this speed?
The family's first taste of the modern world is a highway service station.
I've never been very fond of service stations at the best of times.
We would like...
3 Whoppers, but can we have them without anything on them? Just
Yeah,
yeah.
3 Whoppers plain.
Yeah. That's 4 months' wages.
Okay, £1.34.
Look at this. Look. Essential shopping guide for your Victorian home.
Oh, that's it, straight down the shop.
What's wrong? Go on. What's wrong? What's wrong with these pictures?
It's too light.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
It's too light, it's too clean, it's too... No. Pristine.
I can't work.
That one does.
Oh.
It rings. I've got a headache.
I hate all this. I do. I hate it all.
And then
It's time to go now.
look at the friends going.
Come on, let's just go home, everybody.
Since coming back, I appreciate more things like my hairdryer and my makeup and my choice of clothes that I can have, and, you know, being able to wear clean clothes every single day. That just, like, cleanliness and things like that just really make me feel much better in myself, and I appreciate that a lot. And I do think about, you know, how bad it was in the house.
I don't care what anyone says about that house. It was quite clean. We didn't catch anything, and we managed perfectly well. I mean, if the toilet got blocked up, those soda crystals would have done the job. We washed the floor with them, we washed the dishes with them. By the end of the 3 months, that hadn't become an issue. So it makes me wonder why, when I came back, I then filled this cupboard here with all manner of things that I now think I need. Do I need them? I mean, do I heck?
Oh, horseman, no! Horseman, no! Oh, only 2. Never mind. I'll do it again. I took over them.
Having shaved with a cutthroat rover for 3 months, this is sheer bliss.
Right, if you want to know what I really miss most, it was the washing machine. Because, look, minimum effort, maximum result. In it goes. Magic.
To find out more about the Bowler family, time travel back to 1900 and beyond at pbs.org.
This experience for me, has been enormous, much more than I thought it was going to be. I think I'd seen it on a superficial level, and it was going to be me indulging in my own little time travel fantasy, and it's not that at all. It's me discovering raw history. It's me discovering advances in technology. I think we just take so much for granted these days. We don't realise what's actually happened in the last 100 years.
The 1900 house was made possible by contributions to your